Good stewards know we can't get to heaven unless we are twice blessed. In the gospel passage I just read, Peter comes to Jesus and says, Jesus, how often do we have to forgive people? And he's being a little facetious, so he uses the word 7. He says, do we have to forgive them at least 7 times? Well, Peter knows that the number 7 in his culture kind of meant infinity. So he was saying, in effect, should we forgive as many times as it takes, infinitely? Well, Jesus ups Peter's facetiousness. And Jesus says, no, not 7 times, 77 times. It's a play on words. Jesus is saying we should forgive infinity times 10 plus infinity. We forgive the way our God forgives us as many times as it takes. Now, I believe all of us know that lesson. We know it. That's not the question that we need to answer. The question we need to answer is, do we live that message? Do we forgive? Do we forgive everyone, no matter how seriously they may harm us? Here's a modern parable. It's based on a true story. Billy was riding in the back seat of the family car. He was sandwiched between his 2 brothers. His mother was driving, and Annie was in a deep funk, very depressed. Her husband had just, without warning, walked out and said, not coming back. She didn't know what to do. And all of a sudden she snapped. And she turned around, even though she's still driving, and she slapped Billy across his face and said, you know, I never wanted you. Never. I had you because your dad wanted me to. I hate you. Billy's face hurt. It stung. But his heart and soul hurt a great deal worse. They were scarred. Billy relived that moment thousands of times over the years. But when he got in his mid-20s, he went to a retreat, and the retreat master based the retreat on the gospel passage we just heard and said, you know, we've got to learn how to forgive. And we have to forgive even those who have seriously harmed us, even if they don't ask for the forgiveness. Billy thought about it, and he recognized that he had lived in resentment and anger for years because of that incident. That he was a slave to that brief moment in his life. So he called up his mother, arranged a meeting with her, and sat down and said, Mom, I've been thinking about this. I've been praying over this, and I have put myself into your shoes. And I realized, you know, you just had a high school education. Your husband had just walked out on you. You had no job, no money. You didn't know what to do. I understand, and I forgive you. Annie began bawling, crying uncontrollably. Billy reached out and hugged his mother, and cried with her, and it seemed like an eternity. And after they had cried a long time, Billy said, "It's a new life for me, for you, for us." Billy understands the message Jesus gives us today. We're called to forgive those who have harmed us. I hope those who have harmed us will ask for forgiveness, but if they don't ask for forgiveness, Jesus expects us to give it anyway. And, as I alluded to at the beginning of Mass, Shakespeare puts it well, because Shakespeare says, forgiveness is twice blessed. And it is, because those who forgive have their anger and their resentment lifted. They dramatically improve their lives. And then, of course, if we forgive others, we get that contract fulfilled at the end of the Our Father, where we say, "Lord, we'll accept only as much forgiveness as we give." So if we give that generously, if we forgive that generously, God showers us with His forgiveness for our offenses. There's another modern parable. It's also based on a true story. Beulah came home. Her dad found out that she had had sex with her teenage boyfriend. And in front of 3 of Beulah's girlfriends said, "You're a worthless slut." She was embarrassed beyond imagining. And he said, "I ought to kick you out of the house. I ought to kick you out of our family." And Beulah said, you don't have to. I'm leaving." And she did. She ran away from home. 8 years later, in her mid-20s, Beulah was married, had a couple of children, and she asked her husband, Bill, I've spent these 8 years, great anger and resentment against Dad. I've got to get over this. And Bill said, "Well, why don't you go see Father Mike?" And she did. And Father Mike told her, "Beulah, first thing you need to do is go to confession. Get God's forgiveness for your sin. Yes, you sinned. And then go see your dad and forgive him." "Well, he ought to forgive me." No. Don't wait. You go forgive him. Don't wait until he asks for it. May never happen. So she went to confession, had her sins forgiven, called up her dad, arranged for a lunch. He came. And she said, "Dad, I have been in anguish for 8 years, filled with hatred for you. It's over. God has forgiven me for my sin. I forgive you for your sin." Her dad stood up. There were 2 plates on the table. He said, "Pay the bill," and walked out. One story, they wind up hugging, happy ending. The other story, it's also a happy ending, but frequently, when we give forgiveness to those who have harmed us, we don't get it back. But Jesus says we should give it anyway. Why? Because we want to get to heaven. We want to get God's forgiveness, and God says we'll get it only to the extent that we give it. So my sisters and brothers, sometime, not Tuesday, not Thursday, sometime this evening, maybe during the halftime at the LSU game, think about it. Whom do I need to forgive? And if someone has harmed me, and I keep waiting for them to come and ask for it, quit waiting. offer it anyhow. You'll be twice blessed. You'll have your anger and resentment lifted, and you will receive the forgiveness that Jesus won for each of us 2,000 years ago on the cross. My brothers and sisters, we are all called to be good stewards, and good stewards know if we want to get to heaven, we need to be first, twice blessed.